Greetings, Lord Captains. Evrengost here, this time presenting a beginner's guide to character creation in Rogue Trader, updated to the latest 1.4 patch and latest DLC Lex Imperialis. A lot of people seem to be interested in this game recently, and I can understand why. Besides being awesome, Rogue Trader has reached its full maturity now, after numerous updates and 2 DLCs. If you're new to the channel, welcome. I'm a completionist gamer who mainly plays RPGs and story-driven games. I've played Rogue Trader a lot. I'm almost at 600 hours right now with 7 playthroughs under my belt, so I think I can share some insights with absolute beginners. I'm aiming my guides at those approaching this game for the first time, because there's plenty of characters builds tagged unfair ready out there. What I found a bit lacking is specific content aimed at new players that's also updated to the current state of the game. Rogue Trader is a complex game, and a new player may feel overwhelmed. My objective here is to ease these new players in. I hope to help you out to the best of my abilities. Character creation in Rogue Trader is a bit of an intricate activity, asking you to make a lot of choices. You may not have a specific idea in mind, or you may have it, but you're not sure how to execute it. First of all, don't start playing this game on unfair difficulty. Some content creators may look cool doing it, but reserve it for later playthroughs when you know the game. Start at normal or daring if you want a bit of a challenge, so the game will leave you some space to learn the ropes and try different things. In character creation, the rule of thumb is to stack characteristics, abilities and talents that synergize with each other. I can't list them all, there are hundreds of them, but I can explain how to start on the right foot. Character creation has 10 steps. Some trivial, like choosing a character's name, others not so much, like deciding what the best homeworld or origin for your character is. You need to have at least an idea in mind. Do you want to play a support character, a melee frontliner, or a ranged death dealer? Start with a vision. From there, plan out, at least in broad strokes, what classes you want to be, here called archetypes. You'll eventually have a first-tier archetype, a second-tier archetype, and finally become an exemplar, all depending on your character level. For now, let's focus on the first tier, because that's what you're choosing at character creation. If you want to be a support character, being an officer or an operative may be an excellent choice. I'm partial to the officer here. If you want to crush or slice your enemies, or even be a tank, consider the warrior or the blade dancer. Do you want to stay behind and shoot at long range, maybe with sniper rifles, or obliterate your enemies with a heavy bolter? The soldier archetype is for you, or even the operative can become a good sniper. There is a whole operative companion focused on that. Speaking of companions, play the type of character you prefer, because you're going to have so many companions in this game that you'll be absolutely capable of building a good party with them, regardless of your main character choice. Without further ado, let's dive in. The first step in character creation is a trivial one, but nonetheless has to be mentioned. You may choose to play 3 pre-generated characters if you wish. They represent the 3 main roles this game has. One is a soldier, one is an operative, and one is a warrior. They are, respectively, a ranged character, a support, and a melee one. They're built pretty decently, and you may start from here. Remember that this will be a level 1 character, and you have 55 levels in the game. But, usually, in an RPG, we want to create our own character. So let's assume you're clicking the option to create a custom one. The second step is to customize your character's appearance. You choose a portrait, and the character's model will already be very similar to the portrait you've chosen. I usually blaze through this part very quickly. I don't mind appearance that much, especially in an isometric game. Anyway, for some players it's a big deal, and here you can further customize your face, body type, skin color, hair, eyebrows, and beard. You may choose scars and tattoos, up to 5 of the latter. Then there are 2 augmentation options, meaning mechanical parts your character may have. Maybe they suffered a grievous wound in battle, and part of their head has been replaced with an augmentation. Then choose the character's voice among a few, both for males and females. You may also choose to not have one if you get annoyed by your character always speaking when you click on something. The third step is to choose your home world, and this is not a light choice to make. Obviously, you want to select something that helps and not hinders your character vision. But what about all those numbers, features, and talents? Let me explain. If you've played any other RPG, maybe based on Dungeons & Dragons or Pathfinder, this will be the point at which you choose your character's subrace. Depending on the setting, in these games you might choose to be a human, an elf, a dwarf, and so on. Here, in Rogue Trader's Warhammer 40k setting, we are always humans. It's the Imperium of Man, after all, and they're always at war against everybody else. Homeworlds are like choosing a human subrace, depending on where they're born and raised. When you select a homeworld, first of all, you have a description of that type of world, which is always nice in an RPG, and then features. Features are nothing more than a talent that a character born in that homeworld always has at creation. For example, a Death World character will always automatically have the Survival Instinct feat. It allows them to gain 20% of their maximum wounds, meaning hit points, as temporary wounds when they fall under 30% of their real wounds, and they also have a nice plus 20% dodge and armor bonus when they have temporary wounds. It's possible you're asking yourself what dodge and armor actually mean, and for that, you can watch my beginner's guide to combat video. I explain all those things in detail there. I can't do it here or this video will never end. Then we have the characteristics modifiers. Your character has 9 characteristics, and those bonuses and maluses are immediately applied to them if you choose this homeworld. Characteristics always start at 30, and then the modifiers you're choosing now are going to be applied. I have multiple videos talking about characteristics, so I'll be brief here just to give you an idea of what we're talking about. Weapon skill is needed for melee combat, both for hitting your enemy and for parrying melee attacks. Ballistic skill is useful for ranged characters, increasing their chance of hitting. Strength increases the melee damage you deal and your athletics skills. Toughness increases your chance of resisting negative effects, your wounds, and the carouse skill. Agility influences initiative, dodge, and half of its value is the dodge reduction for melee attacks. It also influences the very useful demolition skill. Intelligence increases the damage you deal with non-burst area attacks, so shotguns, plasma, melta weapons, and flamers. It also influences a lot of skills, all the lore ones, logic, Medicae, and tech use. Perception is the dodge reduction applied to ranged attacks, and it influences the very important awareness skill. Willpower is your general saving throw against the warp, and Psyker's and Navigator's powers scale with it. Finally, Fellowship is the officer's core skill. It influences the persuasion, coercion, and commerce skills. Skills are based on the relative characteristic value and, up to this point, the bonuses you're going to pick in character creation. Skills are used in dialogue or in interacting with the world, like removing an obstacle, disarming a trap, hacking into a system, spotting hidden objects, and there are a lot of them, or convincing someone to do something. They are pretty self-explanatory or easily understood by quickly reading their description. Just keep in mind that some talents may change what characteristic influences a determined skill, or may allow it to use its value in combat. Now that you have at least an idea what characteristics and skills are, we have the talents. Those talents are not granted at creation. They are available to be bought at level up during the entire game. Some may fit your vision, so you will take them. Others may not, and you'll ignore them. Let's do an overview of the homeworlds. The key here is to choose, obviously, a homeworld that scales well with the type of character you have in mind. The Death World is great for warriors, since it increases strength, toughness, and agility. Also, a warrior doesn't have much use for intelligence and fellowship. The related talents increase the damage done and make the character tougher, allowing them to take less damage or to shake off negative effects. It's great for tanks or frontline damage dealers. Voidborn is good for psychers or operatives at first glance, due to its bonus to willpower and intelligence. But the talents Fortune, that you always have, and Be Smart, that you may buy, open a Voidborn character up to a lot of possibilities. The operative is a very good choice, but you can maneuver around to make something less obvious, like an officer based on intelligence instead of fellowship. Hive World is great for officers, soldiers, and warriors, thanks to the bonuses to fellowship and agility, and talents you may buy. It's great for parties built to be bundled together, instead of scattered around the battlefield. Weapon personalization makes them great heavy gunners too, and you can build a melee frontliner out of this homeworld that's heavily based on mobility. Forge World is great for operatives, because a lot of talents scale with intelligence, but also for warriors, frontliners in heavy armor, or soldiers using melta, plasma, or power weapons. Since, as I said, a lot scales with intelligence, operative is the obvious choice, and you are not forced to only be a support character. Be creative with the Archetype's talents to be effective in melee or ranged combat with melta or plasma weapons. Keep in mind that those are medium-ranged area attack weapons. It can be fun to have a character like this. Imperial World is the generic human type. I've seen it being scoffed at in a lot of builds, but you get to choose a FT plus 10 bonus in a characteristic of your choice, excluding weapon and ballistic skill. Ready to serve makes them great officers. No heresy is also very good if you don't want to have a lore character, but it's generally a pretty decent choice all around. Maybe there are better specialized choices to make, but I've made a couple of Imperial World characters and I didn't regret it. Finally, Fortress World is fantastic for any kind of ranged character, but especially for soldiers based on single target or burst attacks. Never Stop Shooting is absolutely great, giving you the possibility to have an additional attack per round. Hail of Steel is good for using burst weapons. Familiar Kickback and Spare Magazine are useful for any kind of sniper or heavy gunner. I did a whole playthrough with the Fortress World Soldier and Bounty Hunter Sniper, and she was a beast and really fun to play. The fourth step is selecting your character's origin, meaning the profession they had before being chosen as a rogue trader's heir. This is the second non-trivial part of character creation, so bear with me for a minute. First of all, we have a description of the origin, again, always nice to have in an RPG, it helps with immersion. Then we have another feature. By now you know that this is something you automatically have by choosing this origin. The difference with the Homeworld is that, strictly speaking, this feature is not a talent. It's an ability, and you'll have to actively use it in combat if you want its benefits. For example, the Astra Militarum commander can buff themselves and their allies' damage with regimental tactics. The bonus scales with the character's perception and triggers when hitting enemies near the commander or their allies. Also, you don't have to worry about friendly fire. It's a thing, both with burst attacks and overpenetration with single shots. Then we have characteristics and skill modifiers, automatically added to your character when you choose the relative origin. Scrolling down, we have the features that will be available at character advancement, meaning at level up and at different levels, depending on the archetype, you'll be able to buy them. Considering again the Astra Militarum commander, you'll be able to buy a +5 in perception and a +10 in medicae more than once during the character's various level ups. And, as with the Homeworld, we have additional talents that can be chosen, always when leveling up. Let's have a look at these origins. The Astra Militarum Commander, which I've already talked about a little, is great for soldiers, giving bonuses to ballistic skill and perception, and a lot of the talents synergize with being near some allies, granting enhanced damage and various bonuses to the same allies, or when killing enemies that are near those allies. The sniper I made was an Astra Militarum Commander, and this origin, besides being badass, because the Imperial Guard is badass, contributed to her being a beast on the battlefield. The Commissar is great, especially for officers. It grants advancements in fellowship and related skills, plus weapon skill and athletics. It caters to a type of character that's a buffer, but excels at being on the front line, even if maybe it's not your biggest damage dealer. So they might need some kind of survivability. Also badass. Read the Commissar Colonel Gaunt novels. Then we have the Crime Lord, which synergizes very well with soldiers since a lot of their talents scale with perception. Perception is the dodge reduction for ranged attacks. Go watch my beginner's combat guide for the specifics of that. There is also the possibility of exploiting the Killing Plant talent by using weapon skill, but I feel it would be a very niche choice. The Mini Storeroom Priest is a bit of a weird one, at least in my view. It scales all on willpower and is a buffer, debuffer, and damage dealer. I say weird because Psyker powers scale with willpower, but the Psyker is another origin. They certainly need to be in the thick of things, so maybe a warrior, but through a heavy use of the Flensing Faith talent, I can see this working with the soldier or operative based on using flamers or melta weapons. Now we have the Navy Officer. I actually did my very first playthrough of Rogue Trader with one, without knowing I immediately got another one in Abelard. It's a great origin for officers and soldiers, but Brace for Impact makes them great tanks and buffers too, considering the upgrades you might buy that allow you to buff yourself or your allies when using this ability. The Noble is the origin for the total support character, and unsurprisingly synergizes incredibly well with the officer archetype. I've played this one too. It's almost entirely based on fellowship and fellowship-related abilities, and their talent, Serve Me, and upgrades, besides being hilarious, are great for buffing allies in combat. You may grant more action points to yourself and your allies, temporary wounds, movement points, and when your servant is in bad shape, you may choose a new one. And look at those names, they're all friggin' great. Do something. Protect me. Kill it. And so on. The Sanctioned Psyker is a very peculiar origin. It's been argued that it should have been an archetype, not an origin, due to its power and capabilities. But it's also true that, lore-wise, a Psyker is born that way. I know Psychic Awakening also exists, but it's a slightly different thing and it's a talent you can buy. Anyway, a Sanctioned Psyker has a minus 20% chance to trigger psychic phenomena, which is a great thing. If you're unsure about what those are, I shamelessly suggest my video on combat for beginners again. Psychers are based all on willpower, as you might imagine, and you have to choose a sub-origin, or the type of psychic powers your character wields. You can be a biomancer, a diviner, a pyromancer, a psyker that uses power granted by the Emperor, meaning using sanctic powers, or a telepath. Everybody has a different opinion on how powerful any of these branches are, except for pyromancers. They're indisputably very powerful, and I did the full playthrough with the pyromancer when Void Shadows came out. Psychers can be paired with quite a lot of archetypes. They're maybe the most versatile origin of them all. I paired my pyromancer with the warrior archetype, for example. I hit my enemies with my powers, they burned. I hit them with my staff, and they burned. Then they kept burning, synergizing with the Executioner's second-tier archetype. Finally, we have the Arbitrator, the new origin introduced with the Lex Imperialis DLC. Besides having a plethora of talents you can choose at level up, greatly customizing your experience, they have 3 subclasses centered around shotgun use, crowd control, or defense. An Arbitrator can be developed in a few different ways. In fact, every subclass has different features, advancements, and abilities. The Vigilant is all around shotgun use, so for example, it pairs well with the Soldier archetype. The Castigator is a buffer-debuffer based mostly on fellowship and the coercion skill, so it would rock with the officer archetype. The Subductor is a frontliner that in my opinion could be a great tank, paired well with the warrior archetype. The 5th step is the Triumph, essentially a moment of brilliance in your previous career. It's a flat bonus to a skill that you can choose, and it depends on the origins you selected. For example, if you chose the Astra Militarum Commander, you may increase the Lore Imperium, Athletics, or Persuasion. If you chose the next origin, the Commissar, you may increase Logic, Coercion, and Demolition. The 6th step is Darkest Hour, the lowest moment of your career. It's a malus and you have to take it. Simply select something that lowers a skill not useful for the character vision you have. It somewhat counterbalances the moment of triumph. The 7th step is choosing your first tier archetype, meaning the first class your character is going to have. This is where your character vision really takes shape. You'll be selecting talents, abilities, and bonuses from this archetype for 15 levels. So give it a moment of your thought. Choose between 5: Warrior, Officer, Operative, Soldier, and Blade Dancer. This last one has been added with the Void Shadows DLC. You can see that your first tier archetype determines which second tier one you may choose. For example, once they reach the 16th level, a warrior may choose to become an assassin, a vanguard, an arch-militant, or an executioner. An officer may become a vanguard, a master tactician, a grand strategist, or an overseer. You get the gist of it. You may wing it just for fun if you're playing at lower difficulties, but at higher ones, it's best to have a plan on how to develop your character. This is not a video on builds, there's a ton of them around. Maybe I'll make some beginner-friendly suggestions for builds in the future. Please notice an exception here. For the overseer, you may enter the archetype also depending on your origin, not only on your first tier archetype. Psychers and arbitrators may always become overseers, completely bypassing the first tier archetype limitations. If your character vision is about melee damage, go with the warrior or the blade dancer. If it's about ranged damage, go with soldier or operative. If you want to be in a support role, choose the officer or again the operative. I admit I'm not a big fan of operatives. They aggravate the click fest that this game is, and at higher levels, some other archetype combinations may debuff enemies and their defenses just as well, maybe even better, but they have their role, and can be useful especially against bosses. Step number 8 is to distribute 30 points in your characteristics. You'll see the previous choices you made taking effect here, with some characteristics being over the base 30, and some maybe even as low as 25. I already gave a brief summary about characteristics in the Homeworld section, because it's the first time you encounter them. Choose what fits your character vision here, raising what you need. You can allocate a maximum of 10 points in a single characteristic, so you are going to raise a minimum of 3 different ones. Step number 9 is trivial. As a rogue trader heir, you have your dynasty's void ship at your disposal. Write your frigate's name. If you have a special edition of the game, you may have up to 3 different models to choose from. Don't choose the one without torpedoes, if it's still there or it hasn't been fixed. Finally, step number 10, if you want to call it that, is reviewing your choices and giving your character a name. A brief note about skills. Keep in mind that some talents may change what characteristic influences a determined skill, or may allow it to use its value in combat. For example, Demolition Engineer allows a soldier to use the demolition skill instead of intelligence for determining the bonus damage dealt with area attacks. Or here, Magi has most of her skills depending on fellowship instead of intelligence, thanks to one of her unique origin talents, never play fair. I hope this guide is useful for anyone who's approaching Rogue Trader just now. Following this, you should now be able to create a character for normal or daring difficulty, following your own vision about the character you want to build. Of course, I can't give you a straight answer or a path to follow based on your vision, meaning a specific build, because the permutations here are almost endless. High and unfair difficulties are approachable with more experience in the game, or by following specific builds that you may find in buckets. My aim here is to ease you into the game, not to give you a recipe to follow blindly. Understanding the basic concepts of Rogue Trader will carry you a long way. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, I really appreciate it. Like, comment, subscribe, all the usual stuff that helps me reach more people on the platform. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next video.